Should pray for their safety. They should pray that these families will be able to stay together, because in these chronically desperate situations where masses of people are fleeing, families can get lost and little ones can get hurt. So we need to pray for these families, that they'll be able to stay together.
This week on Christian World News, a tiny community of Christians hides in desperation as Turkish and Syrian forces hunt them down.
Plus, this American pastor could spend the rest of his life in a Turkish prison. His defenders say his only crime is preaching the gospel in Turkey.
And how Hollywood is turning to faith. The movie industry finds success with films that appeal to Christians.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스천 월드뉴스입니다. 급진 이슬람 군대가 아프린으로 진군하면서 이슬람에서 기독교로 개종한 많은 이들이 두려움에 떨고 있습니다. 집단 학살을 당하지 않을까 두려워하고 있는 건데요. 아프린은 시리아 내전에서 달아난 250가정의 피난처였다고 합니다. 오늘의 첫 소식입니다.
Afrin had become a safe haven for some 250 Christian families fleeing the fighting in Syria. CBN's Chris Mitchell talked with one humanitarian aid worker who helped them escape when it became too dangerous to stay.
As the battle over Afrin grew closer to the city, many Christians found themselves in grave danger. This is a church service of the Christians crying out to God for deliverance as Turkish and Islamic forces drove towards Afrin. Charmaine Heading, the founder of the Shai Fund, helping the persecuted church in the Middle East, kept in touch with many of these Christians.
A lot of information was coming to them that when these different people who came in who support this radical Islamic ideology that we've seen with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, that they would behead the Christians and they would kill them. And because many of these Christians were originally Muslim background believers, they were particularly going to be targeted.
CBN News has also learned of an added danger. Jihadists broke into the church, found pictures of some believers, and distributed them. They're now hunting them down door to door.
They say our situation is very dangerous and we don't know what to do because they found photos in the church building, and he said they are searching for the believers now in Afrin. So he's the man, he's crying, he don't know what to do, so we need to really pray that God to protect him.
Heading says most of the Christian families have found safe haven, but says the church in the West needs to pray for its fellow believers in distress.
They should pray for their safety. They should pray that these families will be able to stay together, because in these chronically desperate situations where masses of people are fleeing, families can get lost and little ones can get hurt. So we need to pray for these families, that they'll be able to stay together.
Kamal Sito of the Society for Threatened Peoples told CBN News the West needs to help.
USA Christian have to help Kurds in North Syria, as well in Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. It's very, very important to support Kurdish people in this situation, to protect Kurds, because we need Kurds as allies in the fighting against radical idea in Middle East.
Heading says what is taking place in Afrin is ethnic cleansing on a massive scale.
We know from what the statements that they've made that they want to get rid of the people in this area and bring in other people from Syria. So it's a population displacement.
Following the battle over Afrin, many Middle East observers feel Turkey and these Islamic groups will continue to expand and try to conquer more territory. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
이와 관련해 아프린에서 사역하고 있는 한 복음주의 목회자와 좀 더 자세한 이야기 나눠보겠습니다.
Well, you know, this is predominantly a Kurdish enclave in the northeastern part of Syria, which has, Wendy, for the most part of the last 8 years, has been free of the civil war that has gripped this nation. What he fears is that the Turkish and the Islamic forces are specifically targeting Kurds. Now, obviously, those Kurds, like Chris mentioned, those Kurds who have decided to abandon Islam and accept Jesus Christ as their savior, face even more threats and persecution. But clearly what the Kurds in this community fear is that they are being hunted down. They will be persecuted. They will be harassed. And in situations like this week, Turkish forces went into various university dorms and were looking for Kurds specifically.
What does the future hold for them?
It's dangerous. I mean, it's uncertain whether the Assyrians, whether these Kurds will come back to Afrin is unknown because they don't know if they will be safe.
미국에서 사역하고 있는 앤드류 브룬슨 목사가 터키 감옥에 수감될 위험에 처했습니다.
Last week, a court approved a 62-count indictment against him. The American Center for Law and Justice, who's helping the Turkish lawyer, says the charges effectively make sharing the gospel an act of terrorism.
이번 소송과 관련해 앤드류 브룬슨 목사의 변호사를 연결해 자세한 이야기 들어보겠습니다.
Turkey has literally taken the position that Christianization is terrorism. So they have no specific evidence that Pastor Brunson committed any crime. The fact specifically that he's a Christian and a Christian pastor is what they are equating as terrorism and the crimes that he has committed.
But how do the charges make spreading the gospel a terrorist act?
Well, they use terms like he acted as an agent of unconventional warfare while under the mask of being an evangelical church pastor. And some of those activities that they claim are terrorist acts are humanitarian aid, education, and training.
And why are they targeting this Christian pastor?
I believe that after the failed coup attempt in July of 2015, that President Erdogan, or 2016, sorry, President Erdogan basically had a purge, getting rid of anyone that he deemed was not on his side, of course, which would include Christians when it's entirely Muslim country. And Pastor Brunson was one of the Christians that was snatched up in this purge. Most of the Christian pastors had been deported, and Pastor Brunson was not. He was held and has been held since October 7th of 2016.
And some say the pastor is a political hostage or pawn of the Turkish government. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I wholly agree because President Erdogan himself came out at the end of last year and demanded a swap between Pastor Brunson and the cleric Fethullah Gulen, who is living in Pennsylvania. So it seems that Pastor Brunson has indeed just become a political pawn that Turkey has determined to use to swap.
And we know that before he was arrested, he was actually living in Turkey for 23 years. What was he doing before that? What was he doing in Turkey?
He's been a pastor for 23 years in Turkey, in Izmir, Turkey, pastoring the Izmir Resurrection Church. He's never had a problem before with any of the authorities for 23 years, has lived peacefully there. And it was only after the failed coup attempt that things started to change there.
나이지리아에 살고 있는 기독교 소녀 리샤 샤리부가 이슬람 테러 단체 보코하람의 포로로 잡혔습니다. 기독교 신앙을 부인하지 않았기 때문이라고 하는데요. 보코하람은 얼마 전 나이지리아 북동부 학교에서 110명의 소녀들을 납치한 바 있고 이 중 대부분은 돌려보냈는데요. 기독교 신앙을 버리지 않은 리샤 샤리부는 예외였다고 합니다.
The majority of those released here in the video you can see there were Muslims. Sharibu's father said the terrorists tried to convert his daughter, but she refused to renounce Christ. In 2014, the group abducted 276 schoolgirls from Chibok, and about 100 are still missing.
CCM 아티스트 바트 빌라드의 앨범 I Can Only Imagine의 뒷이야기를 담은 영화가 개봉했습니다. 개봉 첫 주 아주 놀라운 흥행 성적을 거뒀다고 하는데요. 바트 밀라드 그리고 영화의 메가폰을 잡은 앤디 어윈 감독을 만나봤습니다.
Joining us now with a look at the film's success is Bart Millard and director Andy Irwin. Thank you both for joining us. So Bart, let's begin. I Can Only Imagine is based on a true story. Can you tell us real quick about the inspiration behind the song?
Yeah, I grew up in a broken home. Parents divorced when I was 3. I lived with my dad from about 3rd grade on. My mom remarried, moved away, and he was incredibly abusive, to say the least. And so it was a tough childhood. And my freshman year in high school, he was diagnosed with cancer. And I was given a front row to see my dad go from being a monster to a man that was desperately in love with Jesus. And by the time he passed away my freshman year in college, he was not only my best friend, but he was the godliest man I've ever known. And leaving the gravesite, my grandmother said, "I can only imagine what your dad's seeing right now." And I became obsessed with heaven, him being a better place. As a 19-year-old, it was like it was an all-time low. I'm looking for the cellar door, just trying to figure out a way to get out. And here this phrase is. And so I used to write the phrase on everything I can get my hands on, thinking about him being better off. And if I was on hold on the phone, I would write it down. My grandmother thought I was practicing my autograph half the time, but it was me just writing I Can Only Imagine down. And
what would you say the main message of the film, considering that remarkable transformation that happens, what would you say the main message of the film is?
You know, the main message of the film is the same thing as the song. You know, when you know, John and my brother John and I decided to take on the movie, we said, you know, Bart, what does this song deliver? And he says, is a rush of hope. And I mean, in fact, if you look in the dictionary and look up the word hope, it says the song I Can Only Imagine is the definition. So, you know, we knew that we had to do a movie that kind of delivered that same emotional transformation. And I think it is. And I think people are craving hope right now in redemption and saying nobody's beyond redemption. And to look at the numbers for the weekend and this audience that we love to serve, that we are part of the audience, to see them show up. 17.1 million opening weekend. That's double what anybody had in their wildest dreams.
Thank you both, gentlemen. We appreciate your time.
사도 바울은 신약 성경에서 아주 중요한 역할을 하는 신앙의 선배이기도 한데요. 사도 바울의 이야기를 담은 영화가 개봉합니다. 이 영화의 배우 감독들을 한자리에서 만나보시죠.
Keep your voice down! Thrown into prison on conspiracy.
Set during a time of Christian persecution in Rome, Paul, apostle of Christ, focuses on his final days in prison. James Faulkner plays the role of Paul.
My life did not begin with hate. I don't recall the feeling as a child.
Looking at Paul, he has an amazing arc in Scripture. He goes from being a persecutor to being persecuted.
Yeah.
How important was...
Wow. Extraordinary. That whole story is extraordinary. And in a sense, I'm prepared to play Paul because I have played so many villains, I guess. There is still some love in me, and this may reawaken it.
Nice.
And it did. It was, for me, a transformative experience to play Paul.
How so?
You cannot say those words without believing them. You cannot say those words without it changing you. We cannot repay evil for evil. Evil can only be overcome with good. What did you tell them?
Love is the only way.
Jim Caviezel plays the role of Luke, who risks his life to visit Paul in prison.
So you deliver an unforgettable performance in Passion of the Christ that people all these years later, myself included, still talking about.
Red.
You haven't done a biblical film since then.
That's right.
What is it about Luke that made you say, yeah, this is the return?
It wasn't necessarily about Luke. It was finding the right story. What I'm looking for is common sense.
Yeah.
And there was a common sense to this. It wasn't a film that just beat you over the head. I realized that this movie can, someone who doesn't know who God is, I mean, anything about him, that it would have a massive effect on him.
The film's director, Andrew Hyatt, also wrote the film. For him, Paul's story is his story.
I walked away from the church for about 7 years, and then I had a major reconversion back, very much in the vein of St. Paul, a Damascus Road type experience.
It's a story that touched many on the set.
I just happened to go through a personal experience that was so rough this last year. My wife lost her brother. We were on the precipice of losing one of our best friends. He was a mentor to me. You know, every morning we would get up and go swimming down to the ocean. Stories like, you know, doing the Passion and then not being able to get the jobs that you used to get. And here's a film that is that successful and you're treated like a bum on the street in your own industry, you know. And he always was the right kind of person that was so authentic to me because he always got me focused on not being a victim. When he died this last year, it was a cross and it hurt, but I was able to expiate my pain playing this guy, and I was able to now see what this story could be. It's really a mentor relationship.
Is this preparing you for the follow-up to Passion?
Most definitely. It's part of the plan. It's part of the way. And it doesn't mean that we're going to not have any crosses along the way. The Passion of the Christ had a cross that was just that close to taking my life. A lightning strike, open heart surgery. It was traumatic. The loss of your Hollywood friends, and but would I change that direction? No, it was the greatest thing ever.
올 초 중국의 신년 축제에 참여하기 위해 많은 미국인들이 중국을 방문했는데요. 이 가운데는 중국인들과 하나님의 사랑을 나누기 원해 다시 한번 중국을 방문할 계획을 세우고 있다고 합니다.
All was quiet as the day begins in Xiangping village of China's Hunan province. In many houses like this one, the floors are spotless. Chairs and tables are put away. Delicious dishes of food are on the table. This is a big day for the locals. They are thrilled about receiving special guests. Christian musician Josh Martin traveled all the way from America to this small village. He teamed up with other international musicians to spend a few days here teaching singing and bringing joy to these lovely children. For Josh, this is not his first time in China. The country has a special place in his heart.
I originally moved to China in 2003, and I've lived there on and off for about 8 years. It's an amazing place, and I love the very rich, old culture.
A music producer, Josh says his passion for music all started back in college. He felt God gifted him with musical talents, and Jesus could use him to advance his kingdom.
Present in my earliest memories was singing with my family. Music has affected and directed my life like few other things have.
Josh developed bigger goals, a music project for Chinese children.
I chose to do this album a cappella because there's something so special about this instrument, the human voice. A cappella is so pure and it's incredibly unique, and here in China it's really cutting edge because there's very little a cappella music. It's been fascinating to just sit back and watch God open doors.
When he first met these kids, Josh felt deeply in love with them. Over time, Josh felt something special towards them.
Currently in Asia, there are about 87 million orphans. Every 18 seconds, somewhere in the world, a child becomes an orphan. These are children who are often forgotten by society, many of whom will never know the warmth of a parent's embrace.
American singer Tim Storm was deeply touched by Josh's passion for the Chinese orphans.
We've been trying to accomplish two main goals from the beginning of this project. One is to put out great music and give people more musical resources, and two is to raise money for charity.
Josh and the locals took a vacant government building and turned it into an orphanage. That's because Josh felt God wanted him to give these kids more than just food and financial support, the love of Jesus Christ. Josh Martin is no longer a stranger to those children. They fell in love with this funny American guy. They often invited Josh to join them for lunch and told him interesting stories and taught him Chinese words. During his recent trip, Josh brought additional friends. Meng Huiyuan is a Chinese rising music star. Singaporean music star Jared Tan flew to China too. The three of them are working on a new music project for these kids.
Their desire is to allow music to touch these lively souls.
When Josh shared his ideas with me about the project, I was very excited. It's the message of love to the children. They are so cute and open to learn a lot of things.
Only in a few days, Jared Tam built meaningful friendships with these kids.
I think that they will find something unique that makes them smile and gives them joy.
As Josh and his team continue to travel around China, he's hoping that God will bring more talented musicians to this nation. More importantly, Josh is praying that more children will fall in love with his songs and know the love of Jesus. Meng-Fei Lee, CBN News.
CBN 오퍼레이션 블레싱 팀이 허리케인의 피해를 입은 푸에르토리코의 복구 작업을 돕고 있습니다.
The storm swept the country 6 months ago now. Many are still without power and safe drinking water. Operation Blessing stepped in to help a single mother whose restaurant suffered extensive damage. OB helped restore her kitchen with brand new equipment and supplies. And OB is helping provide safe water for school children and families. They still have a long way to go, George, but they are on the mend.
크리스천 월드뉴스, 오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 인사드리겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.